press play, and I'm just going to find my notes at the same time here. Okay. All right. So I'll just mute you so that I don't hear the trucks in the background. Okay, so we are talking about thyroid, and let's see if we can just get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of that close. Okay, whoops. Okay, let's just move it over here so that I can see you, but I can also see my text here. Okay, so yeah, so I wanted to talk about hypothyroidism, because there are a couple of women in the group that do have hypothyroidism, but there are also potentially women in the group that have a thyroid condition and don't actually know about it, because it is, I don't know if you guys saw my little sort of sneak peek into this, but 1 in 9 women develop a thyroid condition in their lifetime. And I think I can't remember what I said as my stats, 60%, up to 60% are unaware that they have an issue with their thyroid. So that's a massive number. And because hypothyroidism can have an impact on your ability to lose weight, it's just really important to make sure that everyone in this group is aware of what hypothyroidism is, what the signs and symptoms are, and then how to, go about getting diagnosed if you think that maybe this is a problem. And then for the women who have hypothyroidism, what I wanted to do is just go over a couple of different nutrition and lifestyle things that I want you to consider that you can use to really customize everything that you're learning in this program, and really just customize it for you and your specific condition. Okay, so let's start. I'm gonna start with a little story about hypothyroidism. When I first finished my nutrition certification, one of my very first clients had hypothyroidism, and she was quite young, like in her 20s kind of thing. And she was training for like college basketball. And so she worked out very, very, very intensely. And she hired me because no matter what she did, she could not lose weight. And she was packing on weight, mainly around her belly. And she watched what she was eating, and she was, doing this hardcore basketball training. She was going to the gym, doing strength training, couldn't lose weight, could not lose weight. And I taught her everything that I learned as a precision nutrition coach. And she followed everything that I asked her to do, couldn't lose weight. So she then finished her degree, her college degree, and went off to university. And because she went to university, she was no longer training for basketball. She was busy, so she didn't have time to go to the gym. She wasn't as on her eating schedule because she was a student and she was at university, and then she started losing weight. That is when she started losing weight. Even with hypothyroidism, when she started to exercise less and eat more is when she started to lose weight. So I just want you guys to remember that for the women out there that do have hypothyroidism. And I'm going to kind of jump into why I think that this is what happened to her. And hopefully that will make sense. But let's start with some of the signs and symptoms, and you can kind of count them out on your fingers anytime you're like, yes, that's me, that's me, that's me. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different signs and symptoms. Obviously, if you end up with like 10 fingers, then I would say go to your doctor, get your thyroid tested, okay? So number 1, I am often fatigued. Number 2, I often have cold hands and feet even when others are warm. So when other people around you are warm, but if you're cold all the time. I require excessive amounts of sleep, and even with that, I am still tired. I have unintentionally gained weight over the last year, even though I feel like I'm doing everything right. I have trouble losing weight, even when I am on a low calorie diet. I have issues with constipation. I feel depressed, or I am often in a poor mood. The outer third of my eyebrows are thinning. My hair is thinning and it's dry. I have dry skin and a dry scalp. My sex drive is non-existent. I mean, that could also be perimenopause and menopause, but anyways, that one, as well as, this is another one, I have high cholesterol. So those are sort of like the most common signs and symptoms that indicate that you may have some issues with your thyroid, more specifically hypothyroidism. So the thyroid itself, I'm not going to get into too much about like the biology and everything about the thyroid, but just understand, and I've talked about this before, that your thyroid is kind of like the master of your metabolism, and pretty much every single cell in your body has a receptor for the thyroid. And just that alone shows us how many roles the thyroid has to play in our body. I mean, it has like, having like a healthy thyroid ensures that your brain is working properly, that your digestion is working properly, that your heart is working properly, that your bone metabolism is good, that your gallbladder, your liver function, sex hormones, glucose metabolism, cholesterol, how you process protein, how you regulate your body temperature. Your thyroid has an effect on all of that. And so that is one of the reasons that poor thyroid health is going to make you feel like crap, because it has such a big role to play in our body. So one, like a good analogy that you can think about is, you can think about, if you think about your body as like a car, you can think about hypothyroidism as the brake. Okay, so women who have hypothyroidism, it's like someone just slammed on the brakes and the car is slowing down. Your body is slowing down. So like your brain function slows down, right? So some people describe this as brain fog. Like you can't focus, you can't multitask, you forget things all the time. That's brain fog. Depression, dementia, weight gain, constipation, dry skin, hair loss, cold intolerance, like issues with your period, infertility. Like these are all associated with sort of that slowing down, that putting on the brakes of the thyroid, okay? And so when you understand that your thyroid can put the brakes on your metabolism, it makes sense as to why women who have hypothyroidism struggle with weight gain and struggle with weight loss, because you naturally, if your thyroid is not healthy, if it's not in check, then you naturally have a slower metabolism. And I know we've talked about this before, but this whole concept of metabolic compensation, and like when I've explained to you that women who cut their calories too low for too long, their metabolism slows down and that makes weight loss harder. Well, you are in that same position if you have hypothyroidism. Now, it doesn't mean that weight loss is impossible. What it does mean is that you have to do your best to support your thyroid and the proper functioning of your thyroid. So just as a very brief side note for the women who are like, oh boy, maybe I have hypothyroidism, like a lot of this is resonating with me. So what I want to kind of talk to you about next is sort of where I come from when I talk to you about the thyroid. So there's two sort of approaches to thyroid. There's conventional medicine, and then there's functional medicine. So everything that I'm going to talk to you about now is very much what I have learned from the functional perspective. And conventional medicine and functional medicine are very different. So a lot of people sort of I guess not a lot of people, but the criticism with conventional medicine is that conventional medicine treats the hypothyroidism with a Band-Aid. So basically, if you can imagine that If a woman goes in complaining of these signs and symptoms of hypothyroidism, and they go through the tests and they realize, okay, yeah, you know, you've got hypothyroidism. Here, take a pill. Here's a hormone replacement. Take this pill, and you know, just take it for the rest of your life. That is what is often, again, criticized as being a band-aid solution, because it's not getting to the root cause of why your thyroid kind of went out of whack to begin with. And so the functional approach to hypothyroidism, and this is like either because you're working with a functional medicine practitioner or possibly a naturopathic doctor or someone who is an endocrine specialist, their goal is not necessarily to just give you a pill to take every day, but more to be like, why is this happening? What is the root cause of this? And what can we do to support your thyroid? And depending on when you catch it, if you've had issues with your thyroid for 20 years, you probably have to take meds for the rest of your life. But if you catch it early on, or if, again, depending on what's going wrong with it, the belief in functional medicine is that you can correct it, and you can basically sort of help to build back up the metabolism and really make sure that your thyroid is functioning optimally. And that's a combination of nutrition choices, lifestyle choices, as well as possibly medication. So what I'm saying right now, if you do have meds, I'm not saying don't take your meds. And I'm not your doctor. I'm just giving you guys information. And what I want to do is just empower you with the knowledge to really advocate for your own health. And if you have hypothyroidism and you're like, yeah, I still don't feel great, or I still can't lose weight, or whatever it is, then you have to take it upon yourself to push and find someone who will do the digging and find the root cause. I really, really believe that. And we can talk more about this another time. I don't want to go into it too much. But so what I did when I was, I don't know when, I studied with, I took a course with Chris Kresser. You can look him up if you're interested, and I can send you a link to some of the information that he has on hypothyroidism. But again, he is a functional medicine practitioner, and I took a course with him to better understand hypothyroidism, because a lot of my clients have it. Like I mean, I would say almost 1 in 3 of the women I work with have hypothyroidism. So this is something that I really wanted to learn more about and better understand. So everything I'm going to talk to you about is kind of what I learned in his course. So number one thing that getting back to that root cause, what he explains is that the 2 main causes of hypothyroidism are either a nutrient deficiency, and that could be zinc, iodine, or selenium. Those are 3 nutrients that you need in order to have a thyroid that functions properly. Or B, you have an autoimmune condition, which is called Hashimoto's. And again, this is not something that conventional doctors will necessarily agree with, but in the world of functional medicine, there is a belief that 90% of people that have hypothyroidism actually have an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's, okay? And so what that means, again, if it depends, right? Maybe for you, it is just a nutrient deficiency. Maybe for you, it is autoimmunity. But what you can do once you have that knowledge is understand that if it is an autoimmune condition, then your goal is really to treat it as an autoimmune condition. And there are a lot of things that you can do to support any kind of autoimmune condition, which is basically to reduce inflammation as much as possible. And we'll kind of dig into that a little bit more. So when you get tested, most doctors are going to run something called a TSH test, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. And that is a hormone that is produced in your pituitary gland, that basically tells your thyroid to pump out thyroid hormones. Now, if that is elevated, that's when conventional doctors will be like, if it's elevated, it's because your thyroid isn't putting out enough hormones and your pituitary gland is like screaming, like, produce the hormones, produce the hormones. But what can happen is that best way to explain it is that there's multiple steps to getting your thyroid hormones to get into the receptors or the hormone receptors in your cells. There's multiple sort of steps, and they're just looking at that top step, right? With that test, all they're looking at is that top step, but they're not looking at all the other things that may potentially be happening. And that's why you've got to do a little bit more digging. And again, you guys can back this up and listen to this, or you can reach out to me, but you kind of want to make sure that they're testing T3, T4, free T3, free T4, and thyroid antibodies. And the thyroid antibodies are the ones that are going to help you determine if this is an autoimmune condition. So this goes for anyone. So if you have hypothyroidism and you do not have a doctor that is doing all of these tests, I would definitely encourage you to either push for them or find a different doctor. That's just me. That's just my personal opinion. Again, I am not your doctor, so this is just information. But also understand that if you do, if your doctor does run all of these tests and they've run those antibodies and it's come back negative, another stat is that up to 30% of women with Hashimoto's do not test positive for those antibodies, but they still have an autoimmune condition. So just keep that in mind. Again, if you don't feel right, if you don't feel like your thyroid is running optimally, then you need to push and advocate for your health and not give up and be that beaver, if you saw that, right? Relentless, resourceful, resilient. You've really got to push when it comes to hypothyroidism. Okay, so with all that in mind, what I want to do next is I'll just pause for a second and see if you guys have any questions about that so far. Hi, Michelle. Do you have any questions for me, Carrie or Michelle, about everything that I just blurted out there?
I just wondered if your thyroid can fix itself. Or it can't.
I think it probably, I think perhaps early on. So one of the things that I want to talk about, so do you remember when we were talking about metabolic compensation and I was explaining that, you know, for women who are chronic dieters and who chronically lower their intake, and that can cause hypothyroidism. I can see that would potentially, you could reverse it. What I understand is that if it's autoimmune, then it's going to be like most autoimmune conditions where there are flare-ups. And I think you can kind of improve it. Can you reverse it completely? I don't know. I think the belief, again, this is probably something that's potentially, I've read about this before. I don't know. I'm going to go with I don't know, because I know that once you have hypothyroidism, it's kind of a tough condition. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I'd say it was hard. That wasn't a complete answer. Sorry. Any other questions? Feel free to.
I'm so sorry I'm late for one thing.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, I hear often, oh, difficult weight loss, but is there really another indicator or something that I should be concerned about to even entertain the thought that it could be hyperthyroidism or an issue of? Is it just difficult weight loss or other symptoms?
No. So we kind of covered the signs and symptoms at the beginning. I think you jumped on a little bit after, but
okay, so, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. You can go back and kind of go through that list, but the typical ones would be definitely the difficulty losing weight or the unexplained weight gain, feeling cold all the time, dry skin, dry hair, constipation, Like think anything that slows down, like if you think that it slows down your metabolism and it just affects all brain fog, like just kind of feeling like foggy all the time, being tired all the time, low energy, those are all indications. And I'll tell you this, Michelle, a lot of women develop hypothyroidism after pregnancy, and you have had 5. So it could be something to investigate. And I know some people say that doctors should be doing a hypothyroid check on all women after pregnancy because there is that link between the two. So does that help?
Okay.
Yeah.
It does help. You froze there for a little bit, but it does
Okay.
help. Interesting that you say feeling cold all the time. Yes, I have my hot flashes, absolutely, and I have them during the night. I have them at all different times, of course. But then there's the opposite extreme where I am complaining that, geez, I'm really cold. What the heck is going on? Or
Yeah.
I've done the exercise and within, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I'm like actually freezing cold and I'm layering up. It's really strange.
Oh.
And no one's been able to say, oh, maybe it's this.
Interesting. And I referred to 5 children. It's because it's not Michelle.
Yeah.
It didn't say Michelle P. I thought you were the different Michelle. So disregard the 5 children.
Oh, no.
that are there. But yes, so that would be
That's okay. 5 children is great.
yeah, totally. But that would be something to look into, Michelle, because definitely, as women, like a lot of women develop hypothyroidism in their 40s and in their 50s. So I would say, like, for me personally, when I do my general checkup every single year, I do it with my naturopath because I can't be bothered to fight with my conventional doctor. We do a full thyroid panel. I want to know what's happening with my thyroid.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I always make sure is that so with I know that my naturopathic doctor is looking at optimal as opposed to normal. And so what that means is that a conventional doctor is going to tell you if your hormones are in a normal range. But what is often criticized is think about what that normal range is. Who's going to go and get their thyroid checked? Not the healthiest woman who feels awesome. It's the people who are going to feel sick. So if you're in the normal range, you still may not have an optimally functioning thyroid. So a functional perspective or a naturopathic doctor, I always ask, are you looking at the normal range or the optimal range? Because they are very different. And so what is considered normal in conventional medicine is not considered optimal in functional medicine. And that is a huge difference, which is why I say, if you know you have hypothyroidism,
I would say so.
You do not feel good, you gotta push, you gotta push, you gotta push. And find someone that's willing to do the work with you, because if your doctor's just like, you're fine, or they just keep upping your meds, find a different doctor. That's my personal opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
It sounds good to me. It sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk a little bit now. I'm just going to mute you, Michelle. So let's talk a little bit about sort of specific strategies. Okay. Okay. So there are 4 sort of, when it comes to, again, just women who have definitely been diagnosed with hypothyroidism. So there are 4 kind of main dietary concerns. Again, this is from the functional world. Your conventional doctor may not agree, you may not agree, but I'm just putting this out there. So 4 primary dietary concerns for women with thyroid. Number 1 is goitrogens, which we'll talk about. Number 2 is your dietary intake of iodine and selenium, which are the 2 nutrients that you need for your thyroid to function properly. Number 3 is the consumption of foods that potentially trigger an autoimmune response. And then number 4 is very low carb or very low calorie diets, which can further decrease thyroid function. Okay. That is why I do not recommend strict keto for women over the age of 40, because I think far too many women suffer with this issue. And I mean, you know, there's a lot of, you'll see this if you Google it, like keto gets criticized quite often for triggering hypothyroidism. Doesn't surprise me. The body needs carbs to activate the active thyroid hormone. So let's start with goitrogens. So goitrogens, it's a chemical. And what happens is that when we eat goitrogens, in order to process it, we use iodine. And because the thyroid needs iodine, when we're eating too many goitrogens, it can create that nutrient deficiency that makes it really hard for our thyroid to function properly. So what a lot of experts believe is that any foods that are goitrogens, and I'll tell you which ones they are, we should be limiting them if we have hypothyroidism, just to make sure that we're not using up all of the iodine and therefore selenium that our body needs in order to function, for the thyroid to function properly. So, so foods that contain goitrogens, I have a whole list and I will give them to you, but they are mainly cruciferous vegetables. So this would be like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, all these wonderful vegetables that are so good for you. And I highly recommend eating them. But again, if you have hypothyroidism and you're not losing weight and you're not feeling optimal, then I would say reduce your consumption of these vegetables. And when you do eat them, cook them. Don't eat them raw, cook them, because when you cook them, you actually eliminate a lot of the goitrogens. So you could limit yourself to about 1 serving a day. And then what you could do as well is you could, for sure, and I would recommend this to anyone that has hypothyroidism, I would also push for a test. I would get your iodine and your selenium levels tested, because you want to know if you have a deficiency. And you want to know if you should be supplementing with iodine or if you should be supplementing with selenium. Now, I never ever recommend supplementing unless you know for sure that this is a problem. So that's why I say you must talk to your doctor, you must get tested before you supplement, because you also don't want too much iodine, and you need to have the right amount of iodine in balance with selenium. So it's complex. You can't just go to the health food store and grab some iodine and think that, you know, your hypothyroid symptoms will go away, okay? So get tested for iodine deficiency. That was the second one on my list. And this is going to be especially true if you do not consume iodized salt or seafood quite often, or seaweed snacks, which are also a great source of iodine. So if you don't eat any of those, then, you know, there's a potential that you have an iodine deficiency. And then selenium, most women do get enough selenium, but again, you know, because one of the root causes of hypothyroidism is nutrient deficiencies, to me, it just makes sense to get it tested. But sources of selenium: Brazil nuts, tuna, halibut, sardines, ham, steak, turkey, chicken, eggs, and spinach. Those are all excellent sources, and they're all part of the Flat Belly Over 40 formula. So that is good. I'm going to assume that you are getting plenty of selenium, but might as well get tested. All right, so let's move on to foods that may trigger an autoimmune response. So what happens is that, so just kind of explaining what an autoimmune response is, and I'm going to simplify this. It's way more complex, but what it looks like is that imagine if you eat a food, and as it gets digested and goes through your large intestine and into your bloodstream, your body perceives that as a foreign invader and it attacks it. So that is an autoimmune response. It's when the body kind of gets like, it starts attacking things for no reason, right? It thinks that there's a problem, but there's not. And what can often happen is that it's this process called molecular mimicry, but what can happen is that then once those little like armies of anti-inflammatory autoimmune killers appear, then they can start to attack different parts of the body that have nothing to do with the foods that you're eating. So again, super simplified version of explaining it. It's not a sciencey version, but just so that you understand how the foods that you eat can trigger an autoimmune response. And again, remembering that some stats say that 90% of women with hypothyroidism have Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune. It's something to consider. So the foods that can make hypothyroidism worse. Nightshades, okay, so nightshades would be like potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, cayenne pepper, like the spices. All of those nightshades can be problematic. Dairy, gluten. Dairy and gluten are probably the worst two. Grains, eggs, and industrial seed oils, which hopefully you have all eliminated at this point anyways. But those are sort of like the main ones. And I'll have to do another talk on this one specifically of just understanding autoimmune conditions, because I know that a lot of women in the group have some kind of autoimmune issue, and it may not be hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, but anyone who their doctor has told them you have an autoimmune condition needs to understand how the foods that we eat can affect that. So that can be another topic for another day. But for now, I'm just throwing those out there. Okay. So when you guys did the 21-day detox, or as you're moving into it, if you just joined the group, you will naturally be eliminating dairy and gluten and grains and industrial seed oils. You will not be eliminating nightshades or eggs. But what I would say is that, you know, kind of you could do it the way that I've set it up for you. And if you do not see results, then I would consider getting rid of the eggs and the nightshades just temporarily, to just see if you feel better, and do it as an experiment, and just see how you feel. One of my very good girlfriends, she was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. She has Hashimoto's. She also has celiac. And for her, she feels 10 times better when she avoids these foods. So more energy, less constipation, you know, no digestive issues, no bloating, no diarrhea, none of that. They all go away. So you have to really listen to your body. And sometimes, like, if that feels really depressing, just also understand that sometimes eliminating the foods for a period of time can just be enough to allow you to reincorporate them later on. But sometimes we just need to give the body a break and calm the flames of inflammation. And then we can get back into reincorporating some of those foods. Okay. Okay. So that brings me to the next point, and this is sort of the last one when it comes to sort of nutrition tips and tricks, which is very low carb or very low calorie. You don't want to be doing that if you have hypothyroidism. That is the reason that I incorporate carb cycling immediately, like within 3 weeks of getting you guys on the low carb train, because, you know, I just know that women of our age, we are just more prone to hypothyroidism. We don't want to, you know, fuel the fire, right? So that's why the carb cycling is so important, and the refeeds on the weekends. That's why this is not a low calorie diet. And why I teach you guys how to do the intermittent caloric restriction, but I teach you how to do it so that it's not chronic, because that's only going to make hypothyroidism worse or trigger hypothyroidism, and we do not want that. So understanding that your body actually needs the hormone insulin in order to convert inactive T4 into active T3, okay? So just understand, like, one of them isn't going to do anything. The active form is what we need. You need insulin. And the only way you're going to get insulin is if you eat carbs or protein, right? Which is why low protein doesn't work either, because you have to have a little bit of an insulin spike. And by incorporating the carb cycling and plenty of protein and the flex meal on Saturdays, we know that we're getting those little insulin spikes, because although we don't want a ton of insulin, we also don't want no insulin, okay? And then low calorie, right? Like, I mean, I've talked about this a lot now. I think you guys know about metabolic compensation and how the body will utilize the thyroid to slow down your metabolism if the discrepancy between calories coming in and calories going out is too large. So this is really important for the women in the group who come to me from a background of eating less and exercising more. And it's really like this big mindset shift of having to understand that that is probably not helping. And you have to learn how to let go of some of that overtraining and eat a bit more to build back up your metabolism and support your thyroid. Okay? Any questions about the nutrition aspect of it? No? Okay. All right. Okay. So the only last thing that I want to talk about, I do have more info, but I'm going to cap it off here. Also, I have to go pick up Sydney at some point, but we still have a little bit of time. But I want to talk about my favorite topic, stress management. Okay, so here are some ways that stress is going to worsen hypothyroidism. So number one, stress depresses the function of the hypothalamus. And so your hypothalamus talks to your pituitary, that talks to your thyroid. So if your hypothalamus is stressed out, it's just going to have this ricochet effect or this downstream effect. So that's number one. Stress will also reduce the conversion of the inactive T4 to the active T3, same as low carb, low calorie, which are both stressors. So there you go. That makes sense. What can happen is stress can cause thyroid hormone resistance. So thyroid hormone resistance is like insulin resistance. You have the thyroid hormones, but your cells are ignoring the message. So that's just an indication of why sometimes the meds themselves don't work, right? Again, it's a very complex, like understanding thyroid is, it is complex. And then finally, the other thing to understand is that when our thyroid is out of whack, then we can also start to see an increase in cortisol levels. And we've kind of talked about cortisol quite a bit and how that can impact weight management. So we just want to overall minimize stress. Okay, so again, if you pick up any book about thyroid health that comes from a functional perspective, there will be an entire chapter dedicated to stress. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. I think that's probably enough because, again, this is a topic that we could really dive pretty deeply into. But hopefully that gives you guys some good things to think about. You know, the purpose of these mini trainings is really just to continue to educate you about your hormones, about your health, about what you need to think about what's changing in your body and your life as you're going through your 40s and 50s. Do you have any questions for me, ladies? And you can feel free to unmute yourself. All good. What about you, Carrie? You have any questions for me? No? All right, perfect.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. And that all made sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about taking, like with the eggs and the cruciferous vegetables. I don't know how that will work, but.
I have no idea how I could possibly give up broccoli.
You don't have to give it up.
Cauliflower.
You don't have to give it up. I would just say, I'm going to post the list.
Okay.
What I would do, I think the best way to approach this is just, and maybe this is something I can do for you guys if I find time, but if you kind of look at the foods that I recommend, right? So the lower carb options, and then maybe just highlight the goitrogens and make sure that
Mhm.
Make sure that they're not, make sure you're not eating like 4 servings a day, right? That might be a way of doing it. Now, again, understanding that
Yeah.
Could you spell that word?
goitrogens,
Yeah.
GOITREGENS.
Yeah, Yep.
Mhm.
yeah.
And
Okay,
again,
thank you.
understanding that it might not be a
Awesome.
problem if you do not have an iodine deficiency, right? So it may not be a problem. It's just
Mhm.
something to take into consideration.
Okay.
So, you could, for
Okay.
right now, if you have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism, I would just, not pound them back. Like, don't just eat goitrogens. Make sure you're getting other vegetables, and then book an appointment and get your iodine levels and your selenium levels tested and find out if you have a nutrient deficiency, because then you can talk to your doctor about,
Mhm.
should you limit the goitrogens or can you supplement with iodine? And that's something that your doctor is going to have to help you figure out. Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Excellent.
And again, I don't want you guys to like start freaking out about all of this. But I just, and if you're seeing progress already, like if you're getting results and you feel good and you've got good energy, then don't stress about it too much. Oh my gosh, cat hair, sorry. Don't stress about it too much. But if you still have constipation, if you're struggling, if you're, if you hit a weight loss plateau, if your hair is super dry and you're tired and you feel like you've got brain fog, then this is like just stuff to think about. I feel like what we're doing right now is already going to be really supportive of those hormones versus a low calorie diet or a super low carb diet. We're also reducing estrogen. And when we have estrogen dominance, that impacts. We're also, we're reducing stress. We're already doing a lot to support thyroid health. This is just like extra.
Yeah.
But if you feel good and you're seeing progress and your energy is good and you're sleeping well, then just keep doing what you're doing. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's nice to see you, Michelle. I haven't talked to you in a while. You should book a one-on-one with me soon because I feel like I have to connect with you.
Fantastic. I think we should.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, ladies, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Bye, ladies.